Namaste, my dear friends. Yoga has become so popular all over the world, especially in the last few years since our Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi declared the International Yoga Day on the 21st of June a couple of years ago. Starting with that, we have seen an enormous number of people getting attracted to yoga and starting yoga practices, and the number of schools that have exploded in the last few years is also quite significant. While all this is good news, we have to be honest in the field of yoga and ask some very challenging questions so that our credibility is maintained and our respect for the tradition is also in place. So in this series of 5 interviews, we are going to discuss about the common dangers that can happen in the field of yoga when we start to practice yoga. The first danger I see is what I call supersized ego. Now, we are living in a very materialistic culture, in a very body-conscious culture, and one of the things that yoga is doing is it is improving our health, it is improving our body's capabilities, and people, when they start practicing yoga, they start to see that they can do handstand, headstand, shoulder stand, very complicated asanas in a reasonable amount of time, especially when they are disciplined in their practice. So suddenly what this gives is a sense of ego, and this ego very soon bloats into a supersize, and many people think that everything is possible for them and they can do everything, and they get lost in the trap of the ego. You can see this in how many yogis and yoga practitioners post themselves in very complicated postures in Instagram, in Facebook and other social media platforms, just to show how amazing they are. Even though the words that they post together may seem very philosophical, the hidden message is, hey, look at me, how great I am. That's the yoga's danger, because the ego can very easily trap us. And the more skillful practitioner we become of physical postures, the more quickly the ego traps us. And this is an essential danger that is in yoga, and we as yoga practitioners must be very careful about this. This is because the ego is not the main reason we are doing yoga, and actually yoga talks about reducing the ego, not inflating the ego. So rather than supersize the ego, we have to minimize the ego, and that is the message of Yogi Patanjali. The danger is that when the ego is growing, we want more and more, and we can very easily get deflated when we don't achieve our purposes. An ego is a very strong boundary, and when the ego becomes bigger, we start comparing ourselves with other practitioners and see whether we are better than them or they are better than us. And it almost becomes like the silly ideas that young children fight about, my mama is better than your mama. And that is not what it should become in yoga field, that my practice is better than your practice. The essence of yoga practice is to minimize the ego and evolve into our true self, rather than increase the ego and go further away from our true selves. So my suggestion for all yoga practitioners, which I tell myself, is every day to have a moment before the practice to be humble and thank for our teachers, thanks to our teachers, and offer thanks to the divine for giving us this healthy body, and to make a commitment that we use this body to serve others and the world in a good way, and not to serve our ego so that we are inflating our ego and devaluing ourselves. Inflation of our ego is in one way devaluating ourselves, and that is not the purpose of yoga. So my dear friends, take a moment before practice to remind yourself that your practice is not just to inflate your ego, but rather to discover your true potential. Namaste, my dear friends.